I was only 14 when I got pregnant with my father's child. For years, I lived in a house that looked normal on the outside, but was pure hell behind closed doors. Now that I'm old, I tell this story not for sympathy, but so no child ever has to go through what I did. If this broke your heart, even a little, like, comment, and hit subscribe to help this truth reach more people. It all began on an ordinary late afternoon in our quiet little town of Brookside, tucked away in Northern California. Everything always seemed softer, at this hour gentler. I remember the way the sky blushed in pinks and oranges, stretching lazily above the rooftops and treetops. That same glow filtered through the windows of Dr. Rufus's clinic as he checked his watch and hurried out of the exam room. People around here trusted him, not just because he was a seasoned family doctor at 52, but because he genuinely cared. His small private practice, which he'd only opened a couple of years ago, had quickly become part of the neighborhood fabric. Dr. Rufus called Mary his assistant, catching him near the front desk. Mrs. Rodriguez left this behind. She handed over a glasses case. "I'll give her a call," Mary added, sliding it into a drawer. Dr. Rufus gave a quick nod and turned to head back toward his office, but something or someone caught his attention. The waiting room was almost empty except for the two of us seated in the farthest corner, my father and me. He was dressed in his usual light blue collared shirt, his broad shoulders filling the space beside me. I wore my red hoodie pulled low, my fingers tangled in the drawstrings. Then I heard it, his voice. Chuck. Dr. Rufus's tone shifted, warm and surprised. He walked toward us with a familiar smile. "Chuck Eaglewright, didn't know you had an appointment today." My dad stood up and shook the doctor's hand. "Good to see you, Thomas. We're neighbors after all. Outside the clinic, just call me Chuck." Then his eyes moved to me. "And this must be Anna. I don't think we've ever officially met, though I've seen you around the neighborhood." I barely nodded, keeping my gaze fixed on the floor. My heartbeat was hammering in my chest like it always did when I felt seen. "We'll be right with you," Dr. Rufus said kindly. "Just finishing up some paperwork." He disappeared back into his office, and we sat in silence. Minutes passed. Eventually, Mary came into the room where the doctor was working. She began methodically wiping down the exam table and sterilizing instruments, preparing for whatever came next. "There's something strange about that father and daughter out there," she said quietly. Dr. Rufus looked up from his notes. "What do you mean?" Mary hesitated, glancing at the ultrasound probe she was cleaning. "When I took the girl's vitals, he wouldn't let her speak, not even her name. He answered every question. I had to remind him over and over that she needed to respond for herself, and the girl Anna, she wouldn't make eye contact. Not once." Dr. Rufus leaned back in his chair, thoughtful. "I know them, Mary. They live just a few houses down from me. Chuck's assertive, sure. Some dads are like that." Mary shook her head slowly. "I'm Mexican too, doctor. And this isn't about culture. It feels like something else." She gave a small shrug. "But you know them better than I do." She handed him my medical file, and I could tell by the way his eyes widened that something inside had just shifted. 14, showing signs of pregnancy, he murmured. Mary nodded, her face solemn. "That's why I'm worried. Bring them in," he said, straightening his lab coat and adjusting his expression into something neutral. The door opened. My father placed a firm hand on my shoulder, steering me into the exam room like I was a grocery cart. I moved stiffly, my red hoodie suddenly feeling heavy and too large. I sat down on the edge of the table, every part of me tense. "Thank you for seeing us, doctor," my dad said, settling into a chair nearby. especially this late. Of course, Dr. Rufus replied. Now what seems to be the issue? My father cleared his throat, seeming oddly nervous for someone usually so in control. It's not easy to say this, but... He trailed off, and I could feel the doctor's eyes shift toward me. I kept staring at my hands laced together tightly in my lap. I understand, Dr. Rufus said gently. Anna, how have you been feeling? I opened my mouth, but the words didn't come fast enough. She's been having morning sickness, my dad interrupted. And fatigue. Lately, she's also complained about some stomach pains. Dr. Rufus didn't take his eyes off me. Anna, would you rather tell me yourself? I gave a tiny nod. And can you tell me how this pregnancy happened? Again, before I could utter a single syllable, my father cut in. She has a boyfriend. We don't want to talk about him. His voice made it clear this topic was off limits. Doctor, my father leaned in, his voice lowered but firm. We need this to stay private. No one can know, not our neighbors, not anyone. Dr. Rufus gave him a measured nod, though I caught the flicker of suspicion in his eyes. Patient confidentiality is standard practice, Mr. Eagle, he replied calmly. I'm legally bound not to share anything discussed here. Good, my father muttered, relaxing just a fraction. Dr. Rufus turned to me, his voice softening as he addressed me directly. Anna, I'd like to do an ultrasound. It'll help us determine how far along you are and get a better picture of the baby's condition. Would that be all right with you? I nodded without meeting his eyes. Mary will help you up onto the exam table, he said, already prepping the ultrasound machine. I'll need you to lift your hoodie just enough to expose your abdomen. Mary's touch was gentle as she helped me lie back. The leather cushion of the exam table creaked beneath me, and I winced at the pressure in my stomach. Does that hurt? Mary asked gently. I nodded again. The abdominal discomfort has been getting worse. My father spoke from his chair, arms crossed, voice matter-of-fact like he was reciting symptoms from a checklist. Dr. Rufus applied a clear gel to my belly. It was cold and I flinched, my muscles tensing. He moved the probe slowly, his eyes locked onto the monitor. Then he paused, the silence stretching. His hand adjusted the screen, and I saw the lines of worry deepen on his face. It looks like Anna's about 28 weeks along, he said finally. My dad's head jerked up. That can't be right. That's too far back. No way it's been that long, Doctor. Rufus looked at him carefully. Has she seen an OB/GYN before this? No. This is our first appointment. Dr. Rufus returned his attention to the screen. It's a girl, he said, then frowned again. But I'm seeing some concerning indicators. Her abdominal measurements aren't aligning with what we expect for 28 weeks. He leaned closer to the monitor. This suggests intrauterine growth restriction, or IUGR. It means the baby isn't growing at the rate she should be. What does that mean? My dad asked sharply. It could point to problems with the placenta, maternal health issues, or even fetal complications, Dr. Rufus explained. And I'm also detecting an irregular heartbeat. He turned from the monitor, his tone more serious now. Mr. Eagle, I strongly recommend that you take Anna to the hospital right away. She needs specialized care I can't offer here. My father's expression darkened. The hospital. Can't you just give her something? Some medication? This isn't something medication alone can fix. Dr. Rufus answered with practiced calm. The hospital has the tools and specialists needed. They can perform a Doppler study, check the blood flow to the baby, and evaluate her development. It's critical. He didn't wait for an argument. I can prescribe prenatal vitamins, calcium, and folic acid to support her nutrition, but that's not nearly enough. Hospital care is non-negotiable. He scribbled out the prescription and handed it to my father. The pharmacy next door is still open. You can get this filled while Nurse Mary helps Anna clean up. My dad glanced between the doctor and me, visibly unsettled. She'll be okay, he asked. She'll be all right, Dr. Rufus replied, reassuring but firm. We just need to clean her up and print the scan. She'll meet you in a few minutes. With visible hesitation, my father took the prescription and left the room, pausing only for a final glance at me. Before the door clicked shut behind him, the air shifted as soon as he was gone. Mary began wiping the gel from my stomach, her hands as careful as her voice. You're going to be all right, sweetheart. Something inside me cracked, and my eyes filled without warning. She kicks when she hears his voice, I whispered. I hate that she reacts to him. There was a pause, long, heavy. I could feel it hang in the room like smoke. Mary looked up startled, and Dr. Rufus's face tightened. Anna, he said gently, what do you mean by that? But I said nothing more. Whatever had slipped out had already retreated into the silence I always returned to. Dr. Rufus tried to make sense of it, I could tell. Maybe he thought I resented the pregnancy, or maybe he believed my dad was angry about it, and I was projecting. Either way, he didn't ask again. He only sighed and said softly, what's done is done. Your father brought you here because he's concerned about your health. Right now, the focus has to be on keeping you and the baby safe. He handed me a printout of the ultrasound. I stared at it, black and white fuzzy, just patterns and shadows to me. Nothing I could make sense of. Through the glass pane in the door, I saw my father return from the pharmacy, the small paper bag in his hand. The moment had passed. Mary helped me sit up, her hands steady and kind, as I pulled down my hoodie. My stomach still felt cold and damp from the gel. I could already feel Dad's hand gripping my shoulder again, his silent way of steering me wherever he wanted. We walked out of the exam room together, and I caught the way Dr. Rufus watched us go. His eyes didn't just follow us, they studied us. After we left the clinic, Mary returned to the exam room. She moved through her tasks with practiced efficiency, but her face remained clouded with worry as she gathered the last of the ultrasound printouts. 9 o'clock, she murmured after checking her watch. That wraps up today, doesn't it? Dr. Rufus nodded, though he looked distracted. I had left more behind than just those crumpled black and white images. Yes, they were our last patients. Mary powered down the ultrasound machine, her hands moving with purpose, though her expression lingered in that place between concern and disbelief. That was unusual, don't you think? She finally asked. A girl hiding a pregnancy for 28 weeks. And what she said when her father stepped out of the room about the baby kicking when she hears his voice, and how she hates that reaction. I know Dr. Rufus agreed, leaning against his desk. His voice was low, weighed down with thought. It was strange. What do you think she meant? Mary pressed. It wasn't just fear or embarrassment. She was clear. The baby responds to him, and she hates that. Dr. Rufus ran a hand through his hair, the gesture revealing how unsettled he truly was. Maybe she only recently confessed the pregnancy to her dad. He might have reacted poorly. She's likely projecting those emotions onto the baby. Hormones, stress. A young girl going through this, it's a lot. Mary didn't look convinced, but she was so specific. She didn't say she was afraid. She said she hated that the baby reacted to him. He offered a hesitant theory. Could be teen hormones, compounded by pregnancy hormones. Mood swings and emotional volatility are normal in both. Mary nodded slowly, but her eyes still held a quiet skepticism. I just hope they actually go to the hospital, like you told them. I hope so too, Dr. Rufus replied. That baby needs monitoring. This isn't something that can wait. They finished closing up the clinic, shutting down lights, locking drawers, setting alarms. Everyone else had already gone home. Just the two of them remained moving through the dimming space shadows stretching across the tile floor. The cool air outside greeted them as they stepped into the night. The parking lot sat mostly empty, just a few vehicles scattered beneath the flickering lights. "Have a good night," Dr. Mary called as she made her way to her car. "You too, Mary. See you tomorrow." Dr. Rufus climbed into his sedan and started the engine, but the sound of the motor didn't drown out the thoughts circling in his head. He kept seeing my face blank, tight, holding in more than it showed, hearing my voice quiet but sharp like broken glass. She kicks when she hears his voice. I hate that she reacts to him. That sentence echoed. As he turned onto his street, the tall street lights lit up the familiar road like sentinels. He slowed down as he approached our house just 3 doors down from his own. Dad's truck was already in the driveway. The house was lit up from within, glowing with that familiar yellow warmth. They didn't go, Dr. Rufus muttered under his breath, a knot tightening in his chest. He passed our house but didn't get far. He pulled into his own driveway and turned off the car, sitting there in the dark for a long beat. Maybe they didn't understand how serious this is. The irregular heartbeat, the restricted growth. These aren't small issues, especially not for a pregnant 14-year-old. He told himself to go inside, have dinner, and end his night like usual. It wasn't his responsibility anymore. He'd done his part, but my voice lingered. With a deep sigh, he stepped out of the car and walked back up the street toward our house. From the sidewalk, he could see the light in our living room spilling out through the curtains. He hesitated, then he knocked. Dad opened the door a few seconds later, his face flashing surprise before he smoothed it into something neutral. "Dr. Rufus. Everything all right?" "I was just checking in," the doctor replied, trying to sound casual. "I noticed your truck out front and, well, I was concerned. I did recommend Anna go to the hospital right away." There was the tiniest shift in my father's eyes. "Right. Thank you for your concern. Anna actually went with her mom. I stayed behind to finish up some things for work. That was the first time anyone mentioned my mom." Dr. Rufus blinked, caught off guard. "Oh, I see. That's good to hear. I was just worried about the baby's condition. She's in good hands now." Dad said, his voice clipped. "Thanks for stopping by, Doctor. It's late and I've still got work to do." "Of course," Dr. Rufus nodded. "Sorry to intrude. Good night, Mr. Eagle. Good night." The door shut firmly behind him. Dr. Rufus stood on the porch for a moment longer, something uneasy settling deeper into his chest. He turned and walked back into the quiet, the yellow porch light casting a long, lonely shadow behind him. As we made our way back home, I had no idea that Dr. Rufus was still turning everything over in his mind. The way my dad had answered every question for me, the way I avoided looking anyone in the eye, and that thing I let slip about the baby and his voice. He could only hope my father had told him the truth. Back at his house, I imagined him standing in his quiet kitchen, opening the fridge out of habit more than hunger. He probably stared blankly at last night's leftovers chicken Alfredo or something equally bland, and stuck the plate in the microwave, though I doubt he really wanted to eat. While the hum of the machine filled the room, his thoughts circled back to Mary's worries, her voice echoing in his mind. The tension she'd felt, the way my father had steered the entire conversation, my silence, that one comment I hadn't meant to say out loud, and now Chuck saying I'd gone to the hospital with my mom. The microwave beeped, but Dr. Rufus barely noticed. That's when something hit him, For all the time we'd lived just a few houses down from him, he could hardly recall seeing me outside, or my mother for that matter. He knew my name, knew I existed, but all their interactions had been brief waves from the driveway, a couple of hellos at block parties, always just Chuck. Never my mom, never me. He carried his dinner into a small home office tucked behind the living room where medical books lined the shelves and a laptop waited on his desk. He sat down and opened it, hesitating only a second before logging onto Facebook. This is probably crossing some professional line, he muttered to himself. But something's not right. He searched Chuck Eagle's name and found the profile quickly. Minimal privacy settings. Too easy. He scrolled through public photos, friend lists, old posts, his eyes scanning for anyone who might be my mom. Then he saw it, Laura Jensen. The name rang a faint bell. Her profile picture was small, but the face in it had a softness that tugged at a corner of his memory. There was a resemblance subtle, but it was there. I looked a little like her. He clicked on her page and browsed through the limited content visible to the public. There were no recent photos of her with Chuck. None with me. Nothing resembling a family. Only images from work events and snapshots with friends. As he scrolled further, the absence became more obvious. Years' worth of photos, and not a single one of me. If they're separated, that would explain it, he murmured. But then why did Chuck say Anna was with her? Despite the discomfort clawing at his conscience, the feeling that he was stepping beyond the boundary of patient privacy, something deeper pushed him forward. Worry, not just professional concern, but fear for me. He clicked the message icon and began typing. Hi, Ms. Jensen. I apologize for reaching out this way. My name is Dr. Thomas Rufus. I'm a family physician here in Brookside. I examined your daughter Anna this evening and just wanted to check how things were going at the hospital. Sorry again for the intrusion. He paused, finger hovering over the send button. This could make things worse. It could confuse her, upset her. But something told him it had to be done. He hit send. Dinner sat cold next to him as he watched the screen refreshing now and then. No response. He cleared the plate, eventually changed into sweats, and got ready for bed, checking his phone one last time before lying back in the dark. That's when it buzzed. A notification. A message from Laura Jensen. What hospital visit? Is something wrong with Anna? Before he could even type a reply, the screen lit up again. A call. From Facebook. From her. He sat up in bed swiping to answer. Hello, he said. Is this Dr. Rufus? Yes, she said quickly. Her voice was high and tight. Doctor, what's happening? What do you mean by a hospital visit? I'm not with Anna. I haven't been near her. His stomach sank. Ms. Jensen, he said, his voice steady now. I saw Anna tonight. Her father brought her to my clinic. She's about 28 weeks pregnant. A sharp inhale sliced through the phone. That's not possible, she whispered. I haven't seen Anna in nearly 3 years. Chuck and I divorced a decade ago. He has full custody. I'm not even allowed near her. He closed his eyes. The pieces were starting to fall into place, and none of them looked right. Ms. Jensen, he said carefully, I need to be clear with you. Your daughter came in tonight. She's in her 3rd trimester and showing signs of intrauterine growth restriction. That means the baby isn't developing at a healthy rate. It could be related to placental issues, complications with Anna's health, or even fetal conditions. He paused, not for drama, but to breathe. I also detected an irregular fetal heartbeat. I strongly advised Chuck to take her to the hospital immediately. She needs a Doppler study to examine blood flow and assess potential organ underdevelopment, especially the brain and lungs. There's still time for intervention, but not much. There was a long stretch of silence on the other end before she finally spoke. "Oh God," Laura breathed, her voice cracking with grief. "My baby girl is only 14. How could this happen? Who did this to her? Her father mentioned she has a boyfriend," Dr. Rufus said gently, though even he no longer trusted a word Chuck had told him. I don't know what to do," she said, sounding completely overwhelmed. "I want to see her right now, but I'm not allowed anywhere near her." She went quiet for a moment. "There's a restraining order," she added softly. "Please, doctor, please make sure she's okay. And if she's not, call the police. I don't care if Chuck tries to report me for violating the court order. She's my daughter." "I understand," Dr. Rufus replied, his tone careful, calming. "But we need to be cautious. Anna is in a very delicate condition. We can't risk triggering premature labor by adding more emotional stress." "You're right," Laura said, reluctantly, as if each word scraped her throat raw. "What will you do now?" "I'm going to check in on her again," he promised, "and I'll keep you informed." When their call ended, he turned to his laptop. The screen glowed softly in the dark room as he pulled up Anna's medical records. The ultrasound images loaded slowly one by one, each confirming what he already feared: growth restriction, a possibly compromised placenta, early signs of diminished blood flow. It meant less oxygen, fewer nutrients, and time slipping fast through their fingers. The clock on his nightstand read 10:15 p.m. Too late for a house call under normal circumstances. But this wasn't normal. Chuck had lied to his face, and Anna needed medical care now. He changed out of his loungewear, threw on jeans and a fleece jacket, and stepped out into the night. The air had turned cooler, a veil of mist hugging the quiet suburban street. The neighborhood lay wrapped in stillness, porch lights glowing like silent watchmen. The Eagles' house stood just ahead, its windows still lit. He walked up the path, heart steady, thoughts racing. He rehearsed what he would say to Chuck, how he would confront him. Then he raised his fist and knocked hard, each rap on the door loud with purpose. But when it opened, it wasn't Chuck. It was me. For a second, I just stared at him. My breath caught in my chest, and I looked behind me without thinking, my voice barely above a whisper. "Dr. Rufus, Anna," he said, his voice soft. "Did you go to the hospital?" I shook my head slowly, my fingers fidgeting with the frayed hem of my hoodie sleeve. "Anna, I need you to be honest with me," he said gently, keeping his voice low. "What's really going on here? Why did you hide your pregnancy for so long?" I opened my mouth. I wanted to tell him I really did, but the sound of Dad's voice thundered from the kitchen like a clap of warning. "Who is it, Sophia? Is that the delivery guy? What's taking you so long?" I flinched. My body moved on its own. "Please, go," I whispered, already pulling the door to close it. "Please." His hand caught the door, not forcefully, just enough to hold it ajar. "Anna," he said, urgent now, but still kind. "I can help you. Let me help. I can't." I breathed, pushing the door just enough to slip it shut between us. He stood there on the porch. I could feel him still, his presence a kind of quiet anchor in the storm. Technically, he'd done his duty. He'd warned my father. He'd advised medical care. No one could say he hadn't tried. But he knew something inside that house was off, and he couldn't just walk away. Not now. Not after everything. He had promised my mother, and I could tell it wasn't a promise he took lightly. As he turned to go, the door creaked open again. This time it was Dad. His voice was tight and clipped, his mouth pressed in a hard line. "Dr. Rufus," he said coldly, "why do you keep showing up at my house?" "It's late, Mr. Eagle," Dr. Rufus replied, his tone professional but steely. I'm concerned about Anna's condition. You told me she went to the hospital with her mother, but I've just learned that wasn't true. I watched from the shadows as Dad's jaw clenched. You've been digging into my life, he said. Where I take my daughter is none of your business. As her physician, her health is my business, Dr. Rufus shot back, and the baby's. Delaying treatment could lead to serious complications, maybe worse. They stared each other down. For a second, I thought my dad might slam the door in his face. But before either of them could speak again, a porch light flicked on next door. Someone else was watching now. A curtain shifted across the street. Someone was watching. No doubt the late-night confrontation had drawn more than just porch light curiosity. That's when my dad's whole demeanor flipped like a switch. Maybe we should continue this inside, he said suddenly, his voice smoother, more composed. No need to put on a show for the neighbors. Dr. Rufus hesitated. For a moment, I saw doubt in his eyes, but then he gave a small nod, and Dad stepped back to let him in. The living room was exactly what you'd expect, bland, sparsely furnished, the same old worn couch, a coffee table stained with years of takeout boxes, and a flat screen mounted crookedly on the wall. I was already sitting at the edge of the couch, hands tangled tightly in my lap, eyes glued to the floor like they were cemented there. Anna, Dr. Rufus said softly, stepping into the space like it might break beneath his feet. How are you feeling? Before I could even take a breath, Dad answered for me. She's fine. Just tired, he said too casually. Pregnant girls get tired, right? Dr. Rufus turned to face him, and this time he didn't bother hiding the edge in his voice. Mr. Eagle, I need you to understand how serious this is. The ultrasound revealed intrauterine growth restriction, and the baby's heartbeat was irregular. That kind of complication demands immediate medical care. We'll get it, Dad replied smoothly. First thing tomorrow. Why wait until morning? Dr. Rufus pressed, not backing down. Why not tonight? Because it's late, Dad said, pointing toward the clock on the wall. She's exhausted. You want me to drag her to the ER at this hour, just to sit in a waiting room for 5 hours? That won't help either of them. The baby could be in danger. Dr. Rufus argued, his voice rising steady but intense. Every hour matters. Dad's expression changed. His smile vanished, his jaw tightening. The baby won't die overnight. Dr. Rufus visibly recoiled from that cold, emotionless reply. He opened his mouth, maybe to object, maybe to plead, but then the doorbell rang. Dad relaxed just slightly. That'll be dinner. I ordered pizza. He turned to me. Stay here with the doctor. I'll get the food. As he walked to the door, Dr. Rufus seized the moment and moved a little closer to me. Are you okay? He whispered. Is there anything you want to tell me? I glanced toward the entryway, where my dad was talking to the delivery guy, digging through his pockets for change. I had only seconds. My hands trembled as I reached into my hoodie pocket and pulled out the folded photographs I'd kept hidden for weeks, maybe months. I handed them to Dr. Rufus without a word. His hand closed over them just as Dad turned back toward us. Dr. Rufus slipped them into his jacket pocket without even looking at them. I leaned closer, just enough that my words would never reach Dad's ears. Please, I whispered, help me. His eyes locked onto mine. You're incredibly brave, he said under his breath. I will. Dad walked in carrying the pizza box, the smell of pepperoni and grease filling the room. What are you two whispering about? She said. She's hungry, Dr. Rufus replied smoothly, which is good. She needs solid nutrition. See, Dad said with an exaggerated grin. I'm a good father. I make sure she eats. He placed the pizza on the coffee table and turned back toward the doctor, his entire demeanor shifting again, now smug and dismissive. I appreciate your concern, but it's getting late. Like you said, pregnant girls need rest. And if she doesn't sleep, that's bad for the baby too, right? Dr. Rufus gave a small nod, though his eyes never left mine. Yes. Rest is important, he said carefully. But so is proper medical care. She'll get it. First thing in the morning, Dad said, his voice firm, I promise. Dr. Rufus stared at him a moment longer, clearly wanting to push, but he knew better. Escalating now wouldn't help me. So he headed toward the door, reluctant, tense. I'll check in tomorrow, he said, the weight in his voice, making it clear this wasn't over. I want to hear how the hospital visit goes. Of course, Dad said, smiling with his mouth, but not his eyes. Good night, Doctor. As Dr. Rufus left, I watched him glance back one last time through the window. From outside, I imagined what he saw me seated like stone, Dad talking beside me, gesturing with his hands, as if everything were normal, as if this wasn't a slow-motion nightmare. Back in his house, I imagined him pacing, maybe running his hand through his hair the way he does when something's wrong. I imagined him finally pulling those photos from his pocket. There were 4 of them, 4 pictures that should have never existed, me in different states of undress, in a bed I knew too well, my dad visible in every single frame. I imagined Dr. Rufus whispering, "Oh my God," as his hands started to shake, flipping the photos face down on his desk, because even he couldn't look at them for more than a few seconds. And then my words from earlier, the ones I had barely let slip, probably thundered in his mind now with an entirely different weight. She kicks when she hears his voice. I hate that she reacts to him. The truth hit him like a freight train. Chuck wasn't just my father. He was also the father of my baby. There was never any boyfriend. That lie was just part of the script he fed to anyone who got too close a shield to hide behind. But the truth lived just 3 houses away from a man who saw him as nothing more than a slightly overbearing neighbor. Dr. Rufus held that truth now in his hands, in his chest, in his gut. He reached for his phone and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? I need to report a case of child abuse and endangerment. He said, his voice calm, but lined with a tremor of fury. A 14-year-old girl, 28 weeks pregnant. The father is the abuser. The child and her unborn baby are both in danger. They need immediate intervention. While he waited for help to arrive, his mind raced. The photographs I'd given him were damning, undeniable evidence of what was happening inside my house, but he knew better than to trust paper, to stay intact in the hands of a man like Chuck. He snapped clear full-frame pictures with his phone, each one painful necessary. Then he opened Messenger and sent them to my mom, Laura, along with a brief message, "I've contacted the police. They're on their way." His phone buzzed almost instantly, Laura calling back. "I'm going over there now," she said, her voice raw and shaking. "That monster. I'll kill him myself." "Laura, no," he said quickly. "Let the police handle this. They're en route. The priority now is getting Anna out safely and into medical care." A sob cracked through her words. "How did this happen?" she cried. "How could he do that to his own daughter? I knew something was wrong when he fought so hard for custody, but I never imagined, I never dreamed." "I'm so sorry," Dr. Rufus told her, searching for something stronger, something to hold her pain. But there was nothing strong enough for this. But Anna reached out tonight. She was incredibly brave, and now we have a chance to get her out. "I'm coming anyway," she said, unyielding. "My daughter needs me." "Of course," he said. "Just please let the police do their job first." After the call, he paced back and forth in his living room, The photos still on the table, his eyes flicking to the window every few seconds. It felt like hours passed, but his watch told him it had only been 20 minutes, then finally flashing red and blue, but no sirens. 3 cruisers turned into the street and rolled silently to a stop near my house, a tactical approach. No warnings for Chuck. Dr. Rufus rushed out to meet them. 6 officers stepped out, one of them a tall man with square shoulders and a steely jaw approached first. Detective Reynolds, he introduced himself. I'm Dr. Thomas Rufus. I made the call, Dr. Rufus said, handing over the photos. These were given to me by the victim about an hour ago. She said there may be more in the house. Reynolds looked at the photos. His face didn't change, but his eyes darkened. She's pregnant 28 weeks, the doctor confirmed. And there are serious medical risks. She needs hospital care immediately. Another officer jogged over. House is quiet, detective. Lights are still on. Reynolds nodded and handed the evidence off to another officer who sealed the photos in a clear plastic bag. Doctor, please stay back. We'll handle it from here. The officers moved toward my house, splitting into pairs, surrounding the perimeter. Reynolds and another officer approached the front door. The others fanned out, watching every exit. I was inside that house, and they weren't leaving anything to chance. Reynolds knocked hard on the front door. Pinewood Police Department, he called. No answer. He knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. He radioed to the back team. A voice came through seconds later. Movement inside. No one coming to the door. All right, Reynolds said, voice like steel. We're going in, possible minor at risk. One officer stepped forward with a battering ram. He positioned it against the doorframe. The first strike echoed like thunder. The second cracked the wood. On the third hit, the door burst open. Dr. Rufus watched from the sidewalk, heart-pounding eyes straining through the night to see anything he could. The officers rushed in, voices sharp and commanding. Police, Pinewood PD. Across the street porch, lights blinked on one by one. Neighbors stepped outside in slippers and bathrobes, drawn by the noise, their faces pinched with confusion and concern. But they hadn't seen what I'd seen. They hadn't lived the silence behind our walls. They didn't know what I knew. Not yet. The older couple from next door, the ones who had watched the confrontation earlier from their window, were now on the sidewalk, drawn by the flashing lights and raised voices. The woman clutched the collar of her robe, her eyes wide with concern as she turned to Dr. Rufus. "What's happening?" she asked, her voice tight with worry. But she didn't get an answer because just then chaos erupted from inside the house. Shouts exploded from the second-floor booths, pounding up the stairs, followed by another burst of noise, this time from outside. People were yelling now louder, sharper. I didn't understand what was happening until I felt the tug on my wrist and realized Chuck had yanked me through the attic window. My feet scrambled against the shingles of the garage roof, slick with dew and steep under the weight of my body. I tried to pull back, but he had me tight, dragging me forward toward the edge. "Back off." Chuck screamed, his voice carrying over the yard like a whip crack. "I swear to God I'll do it. I'll take her with me." His grip bruised my wrist. I couldn't stop crying. My free hand covered my belly, trying to shield her. "Please," I cried out, my voice tearing from my throat. "Please help me." The officers below moved quickly, pulling back, radioing for backup. I heard words like paramedics and airbag as they scrambled to respond. And then I heard his voice. Dr. Rufus is cutting through the panic like a thread of reason. "Chuck," he called, stepping forward against an officer's warning hand. "Please don't do this. The police have the photos. They know everything." Chuck turned on me, his face twisted in a rage I'd only ever seen in shadows until now. "You gave them the photos," he hissed. You little traitor. His eyes burned through me, his voice venomous. After everything I did for you, you don't deserve to live. A car screeched to a stop at the barricade, and then I heard her, my mother's voice raw and breaking, as she fought through the police line. That's my daughter, she screamed. Anna, I'm here, baby, I'm here. I turned toward her voice, my body shaking, my face soaked in tears. Mom. I breathed, and in that moment, something inside me cracked wide open. Chuck's arm locked tighter around me and yanked me closer to the edge of the roof. Officers below had just finished setting up a massive inflatable landing cushion. I saw it stretching out below us like a promise. Detective Reynolds stepped forward with a megaphone. Chuck Eagle, he called. This is Detective Reynolds with the Pinewood Police Department. Let the girl go and come down. There's nowhere left to run. I could see officers now in the attic window behind us, slowly creeping toward the roof. Chuck saw them too. His eyes darted, calculating. Back off, he screamed again, dragging me toward the very edge. I swear I'll jump with her if I have to. Please, Chuck, Mom sobbed, breaking free of the officer's grip. She's our daughter. Don't hurt her. Please, she's mine, Chuck growled. You never deserved her. You never deserved either of them. I saw it then clear as glass, how he didn't just see me as his daughter. He saw me and the baby as his to own, his to control, his to destroy. The officers behind him began to climb through the attic window, inching onto the roof, but Chuck made his decision first. No, Dr. Rufus cried, but it was already too late. Chuck shoved me. The world turned into wind and weightlessness and light. I screamed as I felt every part of me twisting toward the baby inside me. But then the impact, a bounce, soft but jarring. I landed on the inflatable cushion. People swarmed me. Hands reached for me. Voices, paramedics. I gasped. The baby, I whispered. Is she okay? I'm your doctor, Dr. Rufus said, as he knelt beside me. His hand was warm on my belly. We'll take you to the hospital and make sure. But I felt movement. I think she's okay. Anna, you were so brave. The lights of the cruiser strobed across the street, painting the night in red and blue. I could see Chuck now. He'd tried to leap off in another direction, but the officers had slammed him down hard. He wasn't breathing fire anymore, just dust and handcuffs. They dragged him toward a patrol car, and that's when he saw me surrounded by paramedics, my mom clutching my hand. This is your fault, he screamed, thrashing. You were never her mother. My mom lunged, her face crumpling as she shouted, You monster, what you did to our daughter. You're not even human. An officer held her back, gently, guiding her away, while another officer shoved Chuck into the back seat of the cruiser. Dr. Rufus came to her side, his face pale but steady. She looked at him, her voice shaking. I always knew something was off about him, she said, barely breathing. But this, she didn't have to finish. I knew what she meant. And for the first time in years, I knew she was really here with me. And I wasn't alone anymore. You couldn't have known, Dr. Rufus said quietly. Men like Chuck, they're experts at hiding what they really are. I was lying on a stretcher, paramedics adjusting wires and straps around me, prepping me for the ambulance. I felt the cold press of medical tape against my skin, the weight of everything still unreal. Dr. Rufus gently guided my mom closer. She needs you now, he told her. Focus on Anna, not him. Mom nodded, wiping her tears with the sleeve of her jacket, her face pale but fierce. When she stepped into view, I couldn't hold it in anymore. Mom, I whispered, my voice trembling. I reached out with a hand that wouldn't stop shaking. I missed you. She took my hand and pressed it to her lips, kissing it like she was making a vow. I'm here, baby, she said. I'm here now. I'm never leaving you again." Dr. Rufus turned to one of the paramedics. "I'm her attending physician," he said. "I'd like to ride with her if that's okay." The paramedic nodded. "We could use your help monitoring her condition, doctor." They lifted the stretcher into the ambulance. "Doctor." Rufus was about to climb in behind us when Detective Reynolds approached. "Doctor, we'll need to talk at the hospital," he said, then turned to my mom. "And you too, ma'am. But for now, go with your daughter. We'll meet you there." Mom got in beside me, never letting go of my hand, as if something terrible might pull me away again if she did. Dr. Rufus climbed in across from us as the ambulance doors shut. The sirens howled to life, and the city rolled past in streaks of red and blue. Inside the ambulance, Dr. Rufus leaned forward and pressed his stethoscope to my belly. I waited, barely breathing, watching his face for any flicker of bad news. "The heartbeat's still irregular," he said gently, "but it's strong. The fall didn't seem to cause any immediate trauma. Still, the hospital will do a full evaluation to be sure." I nodded, my head heavy against the stretcher. Mom kept stroking my hair, whispering soft things I could barely hear over the wail of the sirens. But they were enough to hold me together for one more mile. For the first time in years, I felt like someone was really holding me. The ambulance pulled into the ER bay. Lights washed over us as a team of doctors rushed to meet us. A woman stepped forward in teal scrubs, her ID badge catching the light. Dr. Gabriela Ramirez, maternal fetal medicine. 28 weeks, Dr. Rufus said quickly, walking beside the gurney as they wheeled me inside, diagnosed with IUGR and fetal arrhythmia. Possible trauma from a rooftop fall, though she landed on an inflatable rescue pad. Dr. Ramirez nodded. "We'll take it from here, doctor. Thank you for acting so quickly tonight." As they whisked me away, I saw Dr. Rufus step back, returning to the waiting room with my mom. I watched them disappear as the doors swung closed. Later, in that sterile lit waiting room that smelled like antiseptic and old coffee, Dr. Rufus sat beside my mother as Detective Reynolds entered with another officer and a woman who introduced herself as Sarah Parker from Child Protective Services. "We need a full account of what happened tonight," the detective said, glancing between them. "Dr. Rufus, please start at the beginning." Dr. Rufus began recounting the evening, the visit to his clinic, my silence, my father's lies, and the way everything unraveled when I handed him those photographs. "Chuck told me the father of her baby was a boyfriend," he said. "But Anna said something that didn't sit right, something about the baby kicking when it heard his voice." That comment made sense after I saw the photos. Detective Reynolds gave a grave nod. "We searched the property," he said. "Just like you suspected, doctor. We found a hidden room in the basement. Looked like it was set up for abuse. Cameras, recording equipment, personal items." Mom gasped and covered her mouth, stifling a sob. "There were hundreds of photographs of Anna," the detective continued, "some dating back years. It's clear this wasn't recent. This had been going on for a long time." My mom's voice cracked. How could something like this happen?" she whispered. "How did no one see predators like Chuck isolate their victims?" Sarah Parker said softly. "They cut them off from support family, friends, even school. They manipulate, they lie. They make their victims invisible. We'll know more once Anna can give us her statement," the detective said, then turned to my mom. "Ms. Jensen, we need to understand how Chuck was granted custody in the first place. That will help us build a stronger case." I didn't hear the rest. I was lying in a warm hospital bed with monitors blinking softly all around me. But I knew they were still out there fighting for me now. And for the first time in so long, I believed someone would finally listen. Mom dabbed at her eyes, her expression haunted and hollowed out by regret. "I'm not proud of what happened," she said quietly. "After Chuck and I divorced 10 years ago, I was working nights at a casino, trying to make ends meet as a single mom." She paused to collect herself, breathing through the weight of memory. "I started going to underground poker games, thinking I could stretch my paychecks, give you something better. But it got out of control. It turned into an addiction. One night the place got raided, and that's when the police found out I'd left you alone. You were just 7. Her voice broke, and the tears came again. Chuck jumped at the chance. He swooped in, like the savior claimed he was the stable one. The courts handed him full custody, and all I got were supervised visits. Then he moved here to Pinewood and got a restraining order, said I was unstable, a bad influence. He shut me out completely." Ms. Parker from Child Protective Services nodded solemnly. "That's a common tactic. Predators isolate their victims. I've spent the last 3 years putting my life back together." Mom continued, her voice steadier now. "I got a steady job. I rented a little apartment with a second bedroom just for Anna. I saved every penny hoping to fight for custody again, but every time I tried to reach out, Chuck blocked me." Before anyone could speak, Dr. Ramirez stepped out of the exam room. Everyone turned to her, breath held tight. "Anna is stable," she reported. "The baby's heartbeat is still irregular, but we've started medication to manage it. We've also begun administering steroid injections to help speed up the baby's lung development, which is critical in growth-restricted pregnancies." My mom's hand clutched mine tighter. "She's severely malnourished and showing signs of long-term stress and trauma," the doctor added. "But physically, we expect her to recover." And the baby mom asked, voice trembling. "We're monitoring closely," said Dr. Ramirez. "The next 48 hours are crucial. Thankfully, the fall doesn't appear to have caused placental abruption, which is a good sign. But the pre-existing conditions, the growth restriction, the arrhythmia, those are still serious. Can we see her?" Dr. Rufus asked. The doctor nodded. "She's asking for her mother. And for you too, Dr. Rufus. She said you saved her life." The room they brought me to was dim and quiet, lit by the glow of monitors and a single lamp. The soft beeping of machines kept rhythm beside me. My IV dripped slowly, fetal monitors gently pressed against my belly. Despite everything I'd been through, something inside me had changed. I felt lighter. The secret was no longer just mine to carry. Mom walked in like she was afraid I might vanish if she moved too quickly. "Anna," she whispered, reaching out to take my hand in hers. "My brave, beautiful girl." My eyes filled. "Mom," I said, my voice clearer than it had been in days. "You came back." "I never stopped trying," she said, as she sat carefully on the edge of my bed. "Your father made it impossible, but that's over now. He's never going to hurt you again." Dr. Rufus stood quietly at the foot of the bed, giving us space, while Detective Reynolds and Ms. Parker waited near the door, knowing this moment was sacred. After a while, I looked at Dr. Rufus and said, "Thank you for believing me, for everything." "You're the brave one, Anna," he replied. "You found the courage to speak up. That's what saved you and your baby." Detective Reynolds stepped forward. "Anna," he said gently, "I know this is difficult, but we need to ask you some questions to help build our case against your father. Is that okay?" I looked to Mom. She squeezed my hand. "It's your choice, sweetheart," she said. "Whatever you decide, I'm here." I nodded slowly. "I want to tell the truth. All of it. Take your time," Ms. Parker said. "And if you need a break, just say so." I took a long breath. "There was never any boyfriend," I began. "My dad is the father of my baby." I saw their faces shift, but they didn't interrupt. So I kept going, the words pouring out shaky at first, but stronger with every breath. It started not long after he got custody. He pulled me out of school, said he'd homeschool me. But there were no real lessons, just enough to keep me from sounding suspicious. I told them how he shut the world out, how he locked me in that basement room when anyone came by. He built a hidden room down there, I said. That's where most of it happened. Dr. Rufus's face tightened. I could tell he was picturing what the police found. When I got pregnant, he was furious. He talked about forcing me to have an abortion, but then he changed. He got weirdly protective, started calling the baby ours. I shivered. She started kicking a few months ago, and I noticed. She kicked every time she heard his voice. It made me sick. I hated that she responded to him. My hand drifted to my belly, gently covering the small flutter inside. But it's not her fault. She's innocent in all this. Of course she is, Mom whispered, wrapping her arms around me. So are you. I started getting really sick. About 2 weeks ago, sharp pains in my stomach, dizzy spells that left me feeling like the world was tilting sideways. At first, he brushed it off like I was being dramatic, but when I couldn't even sit up in bed without shaking, he finally agreed to take me to a doctor. That's how we ended up at Dr. Rufus's clinic. Detective Reynolds was scribbling notes as I spoke. The photos you gave Dr. Rufus, how did you get them? My dad took pictures, I said quietly. All the time. He kept them in a box in his closet. I grabbed a few tonight when he was in the shower just before we left for the clinic. I knew he'd be distracted getting us out of the house. He hadn't let me leave in so long. I didn't even know what to do with them at first, or who to trust. But when Dr. Rufus came to our house, I thought, maybe he was the one who could help. You made the right call, Dr. Rufus said, his voice steady and warm. Dr. Ramirez came in then to check the monitors clipped to my belly. The medication seems to be helping with the arrhythmia, she said, and your vitals are stabilizing, Anna. That's very good news. What happens now, I asked, looking from one adult to the next. Ms. Parker stepped forward. You'll stay here at the hospital until the doctors say it's safe for you and the baby to be discharged. After that, we'll need to determine the best placement for you both. She'll come home with me, my mom said without hesitation. I've been preparing for this for years. There's a room waiting for her. I've been saving every penny I could. I'm ready. Ms. Parker gave a small nod. Under these circumstances, that seems like the most appropriate option. We'll need to do a home evaluation, but as long as everything checks out, I don't see any reason Anna can't live with you. And what about my dad? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He's in custody, Detective Reynolds said. With the photos, the hidden room, and your statement, he'll be facing multiple felony charges: sexual assault, child abuse, incest, endangerment, and more. He won't be seeing the outside of a cell for a very long time. I didn't know what to say. The feeling that washed over me wasn't just relief. It was sorrow, grief, and something that felt like breathing for the first time in years. And the baby, I asked, turning to Dr. Ramirez. We're doing everything we can, she said. The next few weeks are going to be critical. We'll continue the steroid injections to develop her lungs, monitor her heart closely, and get your nutrition up to give her the best chance possible. I want to keep her, I said suddenly. The words slipped out before I even realized they were forming. The room fell quiet. I know I'm young, but she's not to blame for how she came into this world. I don't want her to suffer because of what he did. Mom leaned forward and took my hand. We'll raise her together, she promised. You, me, and your daughter. She will be loved and protected, always. The night wore on. Detective Reynolds and Ms. Parker promised to return the next day and quietly left. Dr. Ramirez finished her checks and moved on to other patients. Mom pulled a chair close to my bedside and stayed there, refusing to let go of my hand. Dr. Rufus stood near the doorway, about to leave, the weight of the night still etched on his face. "Dr. Rufus," I called as he turned. He looked back at me, surprised by the strength in my voice. "Thank you for seeing me, for noticing something was wrong." He nodded, his expression soft. "I'm glad I listened." "You did more than listen," Mom said, her voice full of emotion. "You saved them both when no one else was willing to look." As Dr. Rufus drove through the still streets of Pinewood in the early morning, he thought back over the night. His decision to follow a gut instinct to break through professional lines in the name of a child's safety that had changed everything. He passed the Eagle House, now sealed off with yellow police tape. It was a crime scene now, a place where silence had hidden horror. By the time the neighborhood woke up, Pinewood wouldn't be the same. People would realize the evil they'd overlooked just 3 doors down. When he finally stepped into his home, exhausted but resolute, he felt a kind of peace. In medicine, the oath is always the same. First, do no harm. But sometimes doing good means more than avoiding harm. Sometimes it means choosing to act, choosing to see. As he collapsed into bed, he thought of me, of the baby girl I carried, of the long road we'd have ahead of us. But we weren't walking it alone. I'm not telling my story because I want pity. I'm telling it because I know deep in my bones that someone out there is living a life like mine. Someone is still trapped, still scared, still wondering if anyone would believe them. To you, I say this. You are not alone. I was silent for a long time. I thought silence would keep me safe. I thought no one would ever understand, and maybe no one would even care. But I was wrong. When I finally spoke up, someone listened. And that changed everything. So please, if you're living in fear, if you're carrying a secret that's breaking you from the inside out, find someone to tell. A teacher, a doctor, a neighbor, a friend, someone you trust. You deserve safety. You deserve love. And what happened to you does not define you. To the adults, watching, listen when a child speaks, especially when they speak in whispers. Look closer when something doesn't feel right. Don't brush it off. Don't turn away. You could be the one who makes all the difference. If my story made you feel something, anything, please leave a comment. Share your thoughts. Let others know they're not alone either. This isn't just my story. It belongs to every child who's ever been silenced. And every voice that rises helps break that silence. Let's talk. Let's protect each other. And let's make sure no child ever has to live in fear again.